the holidays, and you just got me. All right, coming up on the 8 o'clock hour. Now, I got several interesting things in the 8 o'clock hour, including your phone calls. Also an author, Janelle Molony, will be with us. She's of the the Kelly Larimer train, one of the many murders on the Oregon Trail. That ought to be an interesting discussion with her, because I didn't know about, this particular murder on the Oregon. We'll discuss it coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, about 8:20. And then after that, we'll back to open the phones again. 888-97 Woods, Wake Up Wyoming.
Warning, this show contains reference to guns, liberty, limited government, low taxation, the cult of climate change, free thinking, cigar smoking, short people, rubber chickens, Karen's bureaucracy, liberal buzzwords, tour runs, traffic, toilets, terrible jokes, and more. No apologies will be issued. Guest callers may express any opinion they want without fear of being canceled. Unless you're a loudmouth jerk like Dave, then Glenn will hang up on you. Strap in, hold on to your coffee, and feel free to participate.
This disclaimer does not refer to every person named Dave, just one particular Dave from San Francisco. We know a lot of Daves. They call this show all the time, and they're great people. So don't call this program and complain that we use your name. That would be a real Dave move, Dave.
A little bit later on this morning, just within this hour, I have an author on. Fire Pit Paul, you still watching? It's a bit of a history for you about some settlers, about people trying to just move across the west through Wyoming, and met a very untimely end. That author comes up just a little bit later on this hour. There's all sorts of stories out west that have been told again and again, but there's many other stories about out west that you haven't heard of, which should be told, or if they are told, they're not told often enough. This is one that I haven't heard of before, and I kind of scratch my head and wonder, why not? This is a big enough deal. On the phone with me is Janelle Molony. She's a author, and also, I think you also dabble in journalism too, don't you?
That's right, Glenn. I am a local newspaper journalist here in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay. So this is a wagon train. Now, when I say wagon train, for those people with me here in Wyoming, I'm in an area where the Oregon Trail and also the Mormon Trail and other trails like that went right through this area. And so there's a lot of stories about those wagon trains as they went through. The ones who made it and all of the people for various reasons who did not make it. These are some people who I think when I take a look at what you've written in this story, it was kind of back and forth. They were wondering whether we're going to make it or not.
Yeah, so the Kelly and Larimer family came through in 1864. They're coming from Kansas and really trying to get away from all things Civil War. And they come through the Black Hills of Idaho, as the Laramie Mountain Range and the Medicine Bow Forest was known at the time because it was dark and shadowy and gloomy and all that. So they come through expecting nothing. Nothing is going on. And then suddenly on July 12th, they are surrounded by up to 300 Northern Plains Indians dressed in full war regalia.
Okay.
And they want to be dinner guests.
Okay, you don't say no to that. You kind of say, sure, whatever you want. And that sounds like it's right out of some old Western movie, too, to be surrounded like that, and they're all in full dress and so on. So if they show up and surround them like that and say they want to be dinner guests, was it a smiling invitation or, no, we're coming to dinner?
I can imagine even if they smiled, the answer would just be absolutely yes, you can do whatever you want. There is no saying no to 300 people dressed for war.
No, not at all. Well, maybe they just dressed up for the evening. I mean, we don't know. What do they dress like back there? So, okay, this is where they're worried, but now there's a part of the story where it looks like maybe they have nothing to be worried about. So they take them somewhere, right?
Right. So one of the things that I'm breaking down in the story is that in the narratives that have been written about these two families, Fannie Kelly is one memoirist and Sarah Larimer is another, is that they say, oh, we were massacred. And so they're using this very strong triggering word. But then also they have all these little quips and such between the two of them of Fannie Kelly started it. No, Sarah Larimer started it. And they get into this little catfight in their own versions of what happened. So it depends on whose version of the story you read. So I'm breaking that down and also allowing readers to see that they're not the only people on the trail. Actually, 1864 was one of the most flooded trail seasons of all trail time, if we can go there. So they are swarming with Northern Plains Indians, and both diarists are competing for whose drama is bigger and whatnot. But what I really want people to know about this story is that they're not the only ones. There's actually other families that are being swept up in this tornado. And I want to share a little bit about that, pulling on that string of what you can find when you take a look back at Wyoming's history.
Well, and it really does have a lot to do with an idea of which end of it you're looking at, from which perspective. To give you an idea, up the road from here, there was the Fetterman Massacre. Now, we call it the Fetterman Massacre, but when you take a look at it from the Indian point of view, well, we had written a treaty and we weren't supposed to be where we were. And so they were pushing our troops out. So it wasn't a massacre. It was, hey, get back on your side like you promised. And they didn't see it as a massacre at all. And plus, a lot of their own multiple tribes took part in that. And a lot of their own people died in those tribes. So they don't look at it as a massacre. They look at it as one particular battle. It really is interesting to hear whose side of the story you're going to get.
I agree with you.
But now, here's the thing, though. But the native side, they don't have a written history. So where do you get that side from?
There are several historians that propose a history or a narrative for them, and they all have some degree of plausibility. One right now that I've recently looked at is before they attack on the Kellys and Larimers, they end up murdering several of their family members. But before they do that, there is word being received from another incident where the military oppresses and kills Plains Indians in another state. So one theory is that someone on a horse ran up to them and said, hey, they just killed some of our people. And in response, they're like, well, we're going to take this family out. That's one theory. It's not the most plausible, and there's others I'd love to share.
Where do you do the research for this? Because there's no way you can do it in one spot. You're not going to walk into one library or go to one website to get the story.
Oh, my goodness. No way. And the stories that you do find, like if you Googled the Kelly Larimer Massacre or the Kelly Larimer incident, you're going to see a certain capsulated version of the story online. But I'm not so concerned with that. Thomas Sowell said repetition cannot be a substitute for evidence. So I have a stack of 50 first-person diaries or reminiscences from this time, and I'm overlaying their testimonies so we can hear exactly what was seen and heard and said and done from the people who were there, the experts, because I'm not an expert on this. Trail historians today are not trail experts on this. The actual witnesses are. So it's kind of like a crime scene, and I'm working on it like, an investigator, but I'm going to the sources, those diaries, those reminiscences, where people are saying their truth.
By the way, major points for quoting Thomas Sowell. That's in my book, you just went up like 20 points right there. Now, first off, what's the name of this book? Where do people get it?
No problem. Well, I'm working on a book right now. It's called Emigrant Tales from the Platte River Raids. And it's not done yet because it's really important for me that I track down the descendants of those who were involved in this incident, and I give them a chance to see what's written about their family, because I want them to have the way in. Some of the stories that are told, including the perception of Sarah Larimer, they're not awesome. She's not the hero. In fact, she's one of the people that sets all of this into motion. And so there's sometimes where the facts that I have don't agree with how a person wants to remember their ancestor. So we have those talks and we work through it, and I get their approval and blessing before we move on. And that's a very timely process. So we're looking at 2023 for the book release.
Okay, 2023 for the book release. Got to make sure to have you back. Make sure you keep Miss Mary's number, and let's get you back on from when that's released. Meantime, you've done other work, and I'd like to know where people can follow what you're doing, because you're always working on something. You've got a long trail of publications.
Absolutely. So I've been digging into this particular subject for about 4.5 years. And it all started with digging into my own ancestor, Sarah Rousseau. She came from Iowa through Wyoming down to California, totally handicapped in a wheelchair. And her wagon train master was Wyatt Earp's father, Nicholas Earp. Now, they're there at the same time. So on July 12th, when the Kellys and Larimers are attacked on the south side of the river, my family is attacked on the north side of the river. But
okay.
They don't die. No, they don't die. They've got all the young guns with them. Sadly, the Northern Plains Indians die in that situation. So there's, again, perspective.
Okay, I would recommend that people go to Janelle Molony. I'm sorry to do this. Think of baloney, but Molony with an M, right? Janelle Molony.
No, it's spelled like colony. That's a better way.
That's a better way. You're right. Colony's a much better way. Janelle, MOLONY.com. That's her website. And again, there's a whole list of books and poems and other things that are worth looking at. Thanks for coming on this morning. I'd love an update when this work is done.
Oh, that sounds great, Glenn. Thanks for having me.
Sure, no problem at all. Coming up to news time. Weather forecast right after that. Wake Up Wyoming.